everybody, today we're going to be talking about books. More specifically, what are my favorite business books that I've ever read? Now this question came from Twitter. I was supposed to answer it like a month ago or 2 months ago from Human Dashti. And I'm going to answer, what are my favorite business books? And then in a separate video, I'm going to answer what are like the best fundamental business books for like the average person. The ones that I'm going to mention are like my favorites and just a kind of synopsis on them. By the way, on my website in the future, I'm going to have like book summaries, which you can kind of like sign up for, and then, you can see my own personal book summaries just so that you don't have to actually read the book. But that'll be in the future. Stay tuned for that. Anyways, we're going to get started here. So I have four of my favorite business books. Two of them I read this year, and two of them I read a long time ago, years ago. So I guess one recent one that I read was a popular one. It was turned into two movies, I guess. And it was Steve Jobs, and it was by Walter Isaacson. Steve Jobs by look at that lovely writing there. But yeah, Steve Jobs by Walter Isaacson. So this book was really good. It was really well written. It was kind of like a mini biography on Steve Jobs. But what I took from it was how Steve Jobs wanted to run the company. So without like going into like an in-depth summary like I will give on my website, he mentioned how he kind of wanted to simplify his own company while also owning the entire consumer experience. So let me give you an example. When Steve Jobs got fired from Apple. Most people don't know that. He got fired in like I think it was the late 80s, early 90s. And then he went on to try and kickstart his own company. Then he came back to Apple, and what he walked into was kind of like a little bit of madness. So when he came back to Apple, they were selling 360 products, roughly. I think it was 320, 360, something like that. And so he's like, this isn't how you're supposed to run a company. You're not supposed to have this many products and they're all shit. What you're supposed to do is have 5, 10, 15, 20 products and have them be really, really good. So when he came back to Apple, the first thing he did was he just eliminated like all of their products and only focused on a few things. And he ended up turning those into, like the iPod, iTouch, iPhone, iMac, those handful of core Apple products. And that brings me to the next point of the book, which was to not just own like one product, not just own the iPod, but he also wanted to make the iTunes for the iPod. He also wanted to make the computer for the iTunes for the iPod. He also wanted to make the store to fix the iMac, to fix the iTunes, to fix the iPod, right? And there's a few stats which are kind of crazy. The Mac Apple store is the highest revenue per square foot store in the entire world. Interesting, right? Anyway, so that's kind of what I took from the Steve Jobs book. There's lots more, but I'll go into that on my website. Those are the things that I took from it. So another book that I read recently, it was Kevin O'Leary. So it's by Kevin O'Leary, and it's called The Cold, Hard Truth by Kevin O'Leary. So the guy from Shark Tank. Also potential future Prime Minister of Canada, which you guys probably don't know. He's running for Prime Minister. I hope he wins. He has a lot of good policies. He's really liberal, but with conservative policies, economic policies. So that's a whole other story. So Kevin O'Leary's The Cold, Hard Truth. Again, book summary on my website. But to kind of summarize the book in like a minute instead of 20 minutes, it was about a biography on Kevin O'Leary. And it had like a solid 30 different key points in it, which explained his theory on how to run a business, how to hire people, how to sell stuff. And there were so many concepts. That was probably my most in-depth book summary I've ever made. And there was so much stuff to cover. And I will say that Kevin O'Leary's The Cold Hard Truth is good for any entrepreneur, any salesperson, anyone in business. It's not just for entrepreneurs. Like I would say the Steve Jobs book is more for marketers and for entrepreneurs. This Kevin O'Leary, The Cold Hard Truth, it's for anyone. Anyone involved in business, it'll give you key points on anything, even investing, because he owns an investment fund too. So he talks about that for a chapter 2 near the end. So that was a really, really good book. Good for anyone. Highly recommend it. So anyways, we're going to move on here. Another book that I read recently was Mark Cuban's The Sport of Business. Sport of Business. And so this book is really short. By really short, I mean, I forget, was it 100 something pages? I did the audio book actually, which was a few hours. I think it was 2 or 3 hours, the audio book. So I think that would equate to like a third the length of a normal book. So it was probably about 100 pages. But Mark Cuban's The Sport of Business, it was really good, especially if you are someone in the tech space in business, or if you're a salesperson, or if you like sports. Those are the kind of three. And it tackles some entrepreneurship stuff too. It tells some cool stories. I just really liked it because I think that especially these two people here, Mark Cuban and Kevin O'Leary, like I connect with them both because I think that they have a lot of the fundamental concepts that I agree with in terms of business. And so Mark Cuban, it pretty much talks about his life, growing up and then starting his business. And actually, what I really liked about the book was the vast majority of the book was not how he went from like $100 million to $3.7 billion or whatever he sold the company for, his AudioNet company, and bought the Mavericks. The majority of the book was how he got from $0 to $1 million, which I loved. And then there was some quote of, I'll just paraphrase it. It was like, people just want to know how to get the very last end result. They want to know how to make the last $1 billion without asking how to make the first $10,000. And so that's what I really loved about it. It's like how to start a business, how he started the business, lessons he learned, all of that. So it was really, really cool book. Highly recommend it. It's probably really cheap. I forget what I bought the audiobook for. I don't think it was more than like $5 or $10, but it was really good. Got a lot of lessons out of it. Highly recommend it. So the last one that I'll recommend in terms of favorite books, everyone knows this. Everyone knows this book, but I have to mention it because this was probably the first real investing book that I ever read. And it's Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. So yeah, you guys have to read this book. It's as simple as that. It's good for anyone, especially young people. I know the vast majority of my audience is under the age of 34, and especially if you're like 13 and watching this, go read Rich Dad Poor Dad, because I think the biggest thing that it did for me was when I was starting out in business, it changed the way I thought about making money and investing. And it kind of changed my brain from like, you have to work a 9-to-5 job and hopefully you'll work your way up the company to get this $150,000 paying job, but you still work for someone else. And it kind of changed my mind from that to you can own stuff and not have to work as much. Actually, I should rephrase that. You might have to work more for a little bit and then you can work less in the future, I guess. Saying that, you can also work how you want, you can work when you want. In this book, it kind of explained a lot of things, just like how investing specifically in real estate, which I love, how that can be so profitable and how that can be your job. Like investing can be your job if you do it right. Now, first of all, I'd like to say here that you will need to probably either own a business to get the money to start investing, or you'll need a job to start off with. So I think what Robert Kiyosaki did was I think he sold wallets or something like that, and he made lots of money and then he lost it all, then he gained it all back and lost some, and but yeah, pretty much he started off selling stuff though and working for other people, and then he was able to build the real estate company. So that's another key part of that book too, is people think that you can, like, I know so many of you message me this, like, you guys want to grow your wealth with like a few $1,000s in stocks, and like, that's great that you want to invest in stocks, but you're not going to get from the $5,000 mark to the $100,000 mark by investing in stocks, or you can't even invest in real estate with $5,000 really. I guess you can if you find a $100,000 home and it's your first time home, but anyways, like, what I'm trying to say here is that you have to have some sort of way to jump to that $100,000 a year business or employee job or whatever in order to start investing in real estate. But anyways, yeah, Rich Dad Poor Dad, it's the fundamental investing book. Highly recommend it. Can't recommend it enough. And those are my 4 favorite business books. As of right now, I've actually been reading a lot more. I got my surgery done about 2 weeks ago, so that's why I haven't really been uploading as of late. And yeah, so I actually was able to read a few books, and I'm probably going to be I'm going to have to update this list. I'm reading The Real Book of Real Estate, and that's one of the very few books that has actually still taught me a lot about real estate. And like, I already thought I knew a lot, but The Real Book of Real Estate, I swear, it was by Robert Kiyosaki as well. I think it came out a few years ago. And within the first 2 chapters, it had already taught me more than like any other real estate book I'd ever read in my life. In terms of actual tangible information, yeah, sure, Rich Dad, Poor Dad will teach you a lot about general investing, but I'm talking specifically about like contracts, getting the right people, some ratios, and I already knew those ratios, like debt to income ratio, all that stuff. But it taught me a lot I'm still reading it. I'm halfway through it. So anyways, I'll keep this list updated and stuff as I go, but as of right now, those are my 4 favorite business books. The fundamental business books that I think everyone should read are going to be in a separate video. Hopefully they'll be in the next video or 2 on my channel, so go check that out. And yeah, so I'd like to thank you all very much for watching. You're all very beautiful people. Stay tuned for the next business book video. See you soon.